to you in about 2 minutes, and then we'll be good to go. Okay? All right then.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Matrix. Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
Okay,
Take the blue.
Okay, thank you. We got it clear. Alrighty then. So let's see if we got Peter on the line. Good afternoon, Peter. Can you hear us?
I'm okay. Thank you very much, King, for having me on this amazing radio station.
You are very, very welcome. Absolutely welcome, Peter. Well,
so
Peter,
I thought I'd try and bring a little bit of humour in at the beginning because, unfortunately, some of the subjects that we are going to cover are a little bit, I suppose, serious or have quite a bit of gravity to them. And it's always nice when you hear, like I heard one of your callers before, he was one who was talking about the fuel and the petrol problems.
yes.
He was most entertaining and he brought some humour into the discussion. So unfortunately, sometimes I get a little bit too serious, but that's just because of the topics that need to be covered and the fact that, you know, we have to take life in a fairly casual way, but we still really need to be serious about how to change the world.
Well, absolutely, Peter. And the fact is that, there are these issues are serious, and sometimes, people overlook them because they don't understand how deep the rabbit hole goes. But that aside, Peter, welcome aboard. Really good to have your presence here. You've been around for a long time doing some sterling work, and that's how I was able to connect with you over the years. I want you to give us a background of who you are, what got you to this particular journey in your life. What was the trigger that motivated you to just get active and do what you do?
Yeah, thank you for that. So, first of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to all the listeners in the London region who will hear this. There's obviously a potential for hundreds of thousands of people to hear it. What I'd make a suggestion now to anyone who is listening who thinks that one of their friends or family members or anyone else could benefit from listening to some of this information that has not been probably broadcast on terrestrial FM radio ever, then they should maybe drop them a line and ask them to tune in, because with your permission and depending on how things go today, I'd like to make it a regular feature, so that would be good to see audience figures climb over the coming weeks.
Well, absolutely, Peter. Absolutely.
So those are some of the sentiments. So as for myself, born and educated in the UK in a Catholic boys' school in Stoke-on-Trent. Following that, went into to study a law degree at Liverpool University, and then I did a short service commission in the British Army. Following that, I went on to work in the Middle East for a financial services company, and that's really opened my eyes to the degree of criminality inherent in the global financial markets, especially when it came to the members of the banking community and the stockbrokers. And the phrase that was often used as a stockbroker is someone who takes all your money and invests it until it's all gone, which has never been more true. So as I saw more and more corruption unfold, as I tried to do everything that the system had told me and implored me to do, I found that ever increasingly it wasn't as to what you knew or how intelligent you possibly were or thought you were. It was always coming down to who you knew. So the degree of cronyism within not only the military but also in the business circles that I was then trying to make a headway in showed me that it didn't matter how good your idea was, it didn't matter how much of your own money you put into it. If someone had decided it wasn't going to work, then in fact it wasn't going to work. That then led me to spend, should we say, a good period of time on a spiritual awakening from around about 1999, the year 2000, till around about 2006 when I made a petition in the district courts in Staffordshire for the arrest of Tony Blair and the members of his cabinet, plus certain international warrants to be issued for members of George Bush's
government
group of political criminals in America.
Right.
So that's what the turning point was. It was the Iran War, 2001 demonstrations in London where so many people hit the streets and nothing was done and nothing ever has even to this day really been done.
The people were
so
ignored,
I'll just pause
basically.
there and let you know that's really what made me take up the gauntlet and decide to not so much attack the system, but to try and educate people as to how they have been deceived and how historically they've always been deceived.
Absolutely. So in a nutshell then, thanks for that background, Peter. So where we are today, what we're saying basically is this term democracy really doesn't work, does it?
No, it's something that is a complete fallacy, and it's amazing that so many people have fallen for it for so long. Democracy, as an expression that I used in a small leaflet that I was handing out in the streets in 2005 or 6, was that in effect it was as dead as disco. Because for one thing, this elected majority parliamentary sleight of hand trick, as I call it, which has fooled most of the people for most of the history, it's a laughter how they pull it off, and here's why. Well, what should give you the most food for thought is the obvious flaw that everybody protests within the parliamentary system, but they seem powerless to fathom the cause or the raison d'etre of the impasse or problem. And it's the stumbling block and the overwhelming and fatal flaw of a democratic government, and it is simply as follows. There is an obvious absence of responsibility resting in any single person. And this is the flaw with the system of so-called representative democracy. It just isn't. You have Tony Blair, you have Cameron, you have Brown, you have John Major, you have Thatcher. A whole series of politicians come and go, and everybody looks at what they do in office as just sort of, oh, well, it was just well-meaning people who got it wrong. But they didn't get it wrong at all. It was a deliberate policy of social engineering, historically set to bring about an end result. And it never fails to, one, trap people into thinking they can't be so stupid as to fall for it, and the other part then, as the insult to their intelligence means they might have fallen for it, they never want to recriminate themselves by pointing the finger inward and saying we were duped. So most people are quite content to carry on, to sail along with it and maintain this matrix-like deception of themselves.
Absolutely.
And this is the sad part of it, that ultimately, you can point the finger at the parliamentarians, you can point the finger at the bankers, you can point your finger at big oil, big pharma, and whomsoever you wish to point the finger at, but ultimately, it's the people that sit there and allow it. It's the people that rally behind the flag and engage in a proxy prostitute war by sending their sons and daughters off to foreign lands for foreign wars to get them killed in their stead. So they can sit there watching the TV, eating their pizza, drinking their beer, and just hoping the system will leave them alone. And apart from that, I don't have any opinion whatsoever.
It's remarkable. The way you put it is absolutely succinct and correct indeed. If people was to withhold their power, i.e. putting their cross on the piece of paper that comes to their door when it comes to voting time, would that have any impact? Would that have any effect? I mean, if you don't vote for them and they're in power, can you actually... I mean, how do you utilise your power if you keep it for yourself? Is there any way that you could do this as an individual and maybe as a collective? Because I think the collective have got to a point now where they're so fed up and tired of the same old games which you've described, but they don't know where to go, where to turn, and what to do.
The short answer to that isn't an opinion, and this is what I'm trying to offer to your listening audience today. There are a lot of people with opinions. There are a lot of people with angles. There are a lot of people who've written books and have got an ideology about what will work and what will not work. To put it very, very simply, you just have to look at what has worked in the past and copy it.
Absolutely.
If it hasn't worked, then undo it. The tragic problem with every politician that has probably come through the British electoral college system over the last, say, 200 years and more, the Panchon Lama described it as look at the wake that the ship leaves behind it. Don't get bamboozled by the pictures or the immediacy of the press or the nice suit or them holding up a smiling baby. Look at what the legacy is and look what they left behind. So how can these people who broke the financial system, who broke the social contract, who broke the NHS, who broke nearly every aspect of British society, from borderless allowance of immigration through to austerity measures, through to forcing children into creches at the age of a few weeks after they've been born. This goal, this agenda of social engineering is there for a purpose, and it has worked for them very well. One of the mainstream control systems in the UK, we'll just deal with the UK, we don't have to look at what's called the UR, that is UR transnational Masonic lodges. Just look at your case in point of the United Kingdom. The Freemasons, I'm sure you've heard of them.
Clear.
Do you know how many there are in the UK operating?
I wouldn't hazard a guess, because no doubt there's thousands of them.
Well, there are officially, according to the Scottish Rite website, around about 10,000 lodges in the United Kingdom. Mm-hmm. So that's 10,000 lodges with an average of around about 100 members per lodge. That's a reasonably active number, and it doesn't include their wives. So if you take 10,000 and you multiply it by 100, you get round about 1 million.
Yeah, that'd be about
If you look at the population of the United Kingdom at around about 64 million, and take away all those individuals in the age brackets up to about 25, when they're still just figuring out what might be going on, and if you take everyone out from about 75, that's through the pensionable age, you've got not much of an interest in society, you're taking out about 40% of that 64 million. So if you take that 40% of the 64 million and then look at the percentage then that we have, we've got a very, very high percentage of Freemasons in positions of authority within local government, within education, within the National Health Service, within the police, the armed forces, the judiciary, and Whitehall.
Absolutely.
For example, the Bank of England has got its own Masonic lodge. So does the Treasury Department. So do various departments in Whitehall.
And so does the High Court. And the High Court.
In effect, if you are not part of the, and this is the world overview for people now, if you're not part of what's called the M people, the lady who used to sing for that group was an amazingly talented woman, a beautiful voice she had. So the M people comprise of the Masons, the monarchy, the mafia, the military, the money masters, MS-13, if anyone doesn't know who MS-13 are, it's called the Mara Salvatrucha gang, M13, created in California in the 80s, I believe. So
I know that Peter, I know that they're global, right? Are they global?
Are they what, sorry?
Are they global? Do they have a global impact in terms of...
MS-13 have have got a global reach, though they originated in California with their influence down into the Mexican border. These are the people that they use if there's dirty work to be done. For example, if MI5, as just one example happening in London. Do you remember a BBC Personality of the Year lady called Jill Dando?
Oh, yes, we were called Jill Dando.
Yeah,
indeed,
she was a beautiful woman. She used to do something called Crime Watch. She got too close to unraveling issues with what's called the Soho bombings in 1999, and she was shot through the head on her doorstep by someone who was never caught and never was going to be designed to be caught. So when dirty work is required, then the likes of MI5, MI6, and Secret Service departments usually will turn to gangs like, and not exclusively gangs like MS-13, but there are lots of offerings.
And these are what are known as the wet men, who just take people out. Yeah.
That's right. So they've got various technologies, just look like what's happening with this Russian kerfuffle or storm in a teacup by wherever, Theresa May and her little cabal at the moment are accusing Mr. Putin of having been, almost the hand on the gun that delivered.
But it's just
toxins.
It's just a diversion, really. It's a game, isn't it? Really, that they're playing, on the heads of the people. There's no substance in it. There's no evidence, So obviously, it's just another diversion in light of what they're going on with, because what they're doing at the minute is really not amounting to anything. In terms of what the government of the day is doing.
What they want is they want the people divided. They want race wars. They want class wars. They want religious wars. They want political wars. They use the media. They use Hollywood. They use the political goon, glove puppet leaders like May and Boris Johnson and Cameron and George, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, George, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, George Osborne. And this groupthink is what they want. You've got this situation now where the President of the United States, Donald Trump, is set to visit the United Kingdom on an official visit. And regardless of what you think of Trump, you might say, well, regardless of what I thought of Clinton and what I thought of Bush and what I thought of Reagan, everybody thought these people in turn, in some degree, were clowns or idiots. But there's no right to be organizing now through one of these Antifa, these anti-fascist leagues. They're going to fly, I believe, a big balloon down the Thames towards the Houses of Parliament as a protest. And these anti-fascist groups are being funded now to cause as much dismay and disharmony as possible. And it's a very strange thing because,
it's strange. Sorry, Peter. Sorry, it's strange in one aspect, but in real terms, when you know the game that's been set, and we know that it's all about, they need to create chaos. They must have absolute and total chaos in order to seal and bring in their new world order. They must have chaos. So everything that is doing is all a game leading up to this so-called new world order that they want to bring in. What say you, Peter?
Totally agree. And what they're creating here very, very subtly with human psychology, which they have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars and pounds on, and millions of man-hours researching, is the actual construction of the human brain. And they've done it through various ways over the decades, especially since 1939 or 45. And what they've got is they've got a system now where the experiments are proven in a laboratory. If you put a dog into a particular type of arena and there's certain pads on the floor, let's say they're black and white, and what happens when the dog treads on one, that he'll be given an electric shock, and so he learns to avoid the pads that are being electrified. However, what will happen eventually, what these experimenters show, is that eventually when the dog is so confused it doesn't know which pad, or can't assess through its intelligence which pads to tread on, it will actually refuse to get up and walk on any pads at all. And it will die of starvation and thirst, even though the water bowl is across the road and the electric is switched off. So the dog can actually be programmed. It's the same sense of the prison system called a pantechnicon. It's a device whereby all inmates within the prison think at any one time that they must be being watched. And if you don't know what the construction of a pantechnicon or panicon, I think it's called, go and have a look at the system that's introduced in some of the prisons in the United States. So it just creates a demoralization of everyone, and that's what's being broadcast at people now, under the illusion of the social diktat of what's politically correct. You can't make a joke about Irishmen anymore. You can't make a joke about Polish people anymore. You can't make a joke or make a comment about Muslims or Jews or almost Christians. And what they're trying to fathom or further or propagate is actually a end of times scenario, an Armageddon, testamental end of time scenario where there is a battle between whether you would say it's the Muslims against the Christians or whether it's good against evil. And this is something that's encapsulated in the Bible, and there are certain factions which are typically the Khazarian Zionist mafia, and this is no reference at all to Orthodox Jewry. So the actual Zionist agenda, the agenda of people like Benjamin Netanyahu in his State of Israel, or Rothriel, have a very specific agenda. And, don't forget, late 1800s, we also had a prime minister who was Jewish, and we couldn't get more Jewish than a guy called Benjamin Disraeli.
Oh, yes.
And to forget the influence of these characters on the political landscape over time. So please, everyone out there, do not be under any doubt whatsoever that the 650, and there's no coincidence that it's 650 politicians, because that number adds to 11, and it's the same as 911 or 911. The 650 numerologically, satanically derived constituencies that offer themselves as the British parliamentary democracy are the biggest con ever perpetrated upon the world. And what the controlling elite know is that with all the intelligence, with all the humour, with all the education, with all the trying to figure it out and not being able to, if the British public can be duped to the extent that they are, then the model can easily be rolled out into other parts of the world as new territories are brought under the sort of dark shadow of this solar template initiate energy that came out of Atlantis. And so, in short, almost every politician of any significance in power on the world stage at the moment is almost ostensibly a reincarnated item that brought about the fall of Atlantis around about 9000 BC.
And I know that to be somewhat, I won't say I know it to be true. However, there was a man called Dr. Malachi York who had various drawings of various beings from other timelines like Atlantis, Lemuria, and when you look at the drawings, you can see similarities like people on the earth today, and hence why what you say makes a lot of sense, because you have to see the pictures of those that were in those particular timelines. How he got those downloads, I don't know. That's obviously spiritual, because we are spiritual beings after all, having a human experience, and so he's been able to give us images of these people. And when we look in the world today, like for example Nixon was supposed to have been in Atlantis back in many lifetimes ago, and he was a ruler, but he was a balanced ruler, where in this life he was a ruler again, but he was on the other side of the fence. Do you know what I mean? So I know what you're saying, Peter, rings true, because that's how it works for those of us that our eyes are open, our ears are open, we can identify and recognize. But I do want to say this, I want to bring you to a point when you mention austerity, I'm puzzled about this austerity, and I'm sure that you can probably shed some light on exactly what this austerity is. From my thinking, I'm saying, hold up a minute. We as taxpayers, because we're all paying taxes, okay, there should be untold amounts of money in that pot to take care of everything that we all need, okay?
Yep.
How then have we arrived at this place of austerity? Are we then to deduce that the government of the day had basically been pilfering the pot, taking money, fattening their own coffers, and then basically crying foul that there's no money and therefore we've got to cut back all of these services? Because as far as I'm concerned, all the taxpayers in this country, there's enough to go around to service every single service that we require in this country and more. Do you know what I mean? How then have we arrived at this place where suddenly, we've got to cut back this because we don't have enough money? And, you know, is it in your eyes, like it is in mine, a mismanagement of funds? And if it is a mismanagement of funds, how do we hold them accountable?
It's a good question, and one I look forward to answering now. In effect, it's not mismanagement at all. It's deliberate theft and sequestration of what's called the global estate or global trust funds. When you look at the word state, all that a state means is an estate. And so E being energy, as in E equal MC squared.
Yes.
If you just cut the E, the energy, off from the state, you end up with what you've got now in all parts of the world are states telling people what to do. Mm-hmm. So as far as the property rights and the ownership is concerned, if you actually look at any or ask anyone, even a 9-year-old or a 6-year-old, who owns the world, the obvious answer that comes straight away back into the youngest would be, well, nobody owns the world, of course. How can they possibly? It's a shared economic thing. And as the earth sprouts people, like an apple tree sprouts apples,
yes,
we're all a product of Mother Earth.
Absolutely.
So as far as this system goes, the austerity is a preacher word from the Vatican Catholic organization that's gone back to the time of Constantine, when what they do is they are the richest individuals on the block, and yet they always plead poverty, that they have no money. The amounts of money in the Vatican Bank or the IOR are enough to end all poverty just out of their small pocket change. However, the Catholic priests still go to all these famished and war-torn regions and claim that they don't have enough money to help, that they actually debilitate the local communities by adding another requirement onto their already taxed and broken backs, which is, you've got to give. So this is why all these things like donate for the Red Cross, donate for children in need, donate for the Cancer Research Foundation, donate for this. You're just donating for everything, and you've got to ask the question, why on earth are people so naive and stupid and bamboozled to think, oh, yes, they still now have to give. Look at the cures for cancer. There's more cures for cancer than you can eat in a week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
The same argument is put each time when a child or a retiree gets cancer. It's radiotherapy, it's chemotherapy, it's chop and cut. Can you imagine or estimate the billions that have been donated by either government departments, philanthropists, or human donations over the last, let's just take the last 20 years. And what? We don't have one alternative cure being touted by the NHS and the BMA. So what I'd like to offer to everybody out there is if they feel as strongly as I do about some of these issues, then it's possibly a requirement to start bringing what's called a class action lawsuit against the, not so much the NHS, but let's take it against the British Medical Association for actual gross negligence, suppression of cure, and also genocide by willingly and knowingly, or with great negligence, deliberately preventing cures being allowed into the hands and into the bodies of the people who need them.
And I
think that's obviously a key element for change.
And I would
when people say we want change, they've got to say we've got to embrace it, and so you've got to do something about it. You've got to stop targeting these organisations.
And I would also include the health minister as well in that class action, because he has a duty of care to the public, he has an oath to serve and protect, and he's failing, because if you and I can know that there's natural remedies out there to cure cancer, come on, he can't be living in a bubble where he doesn't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, what you've also got to remember, and please don't forget this, people out there, that all these right honourable and people who are members of the Privy Council, they've all taken an oath of allegiance to the Queen, not to the people. So there are various oaths when you go to become a member of the Houses of Parliament these days. I think you can now take an oath of your choice, or swear on a book of your choosing, or just make an affirmation. I'm not exactly sure on that, so anyone...
Yeah, you're correct. You're correct. You are correct.
Yeah. So, but when you become a member of the Privy Council, one of the elite within the professions, then you take an oath of allegiance to protect and serve the Queen, and to prevent any the foreign or domestic bodies from causing undue discourse or worry to the good old monarchy. That's another thing that needs to be looked at quite desperately, because that's a whole new story, and we have to keep our timelines really short.
Peter.
In effect, there's no mismanagement. It's all a deliberate blind, and it's been run very, very exactly, and it's been run and coordinated by, and some viewers or listeners, out there who might not want to hear this. The one thing I will say, as a member of what I would call the LuminatI, not the IlluminatI, and I don't think many people have heard of the LuminatI, as a member of the LuminatI, I would like to say to everyone listening now, and those who want to pass this information on to other people, if you do not understand, if you do not have any background of what's called the extraterrestrial or extra-biological entity influence on this planet, then you can keep incarnating down onto this planet for the next 5 million times, and you will never figure anything out. It's a big picture, and it's controlled by various on and off planet elites who are selling the human race down the river, and their plan is to take their real estate from under their feet without them even knowing it was done.
Okay, so we're talking... Okay, Peter, we're talking real estate, so I guess that brings us into... we've got 10 minutes before the news and views, but we are going to cover this whole mortgage thing that you've developed in terms of sorting out people's mortgages. Equally... again, I don't want to go too deep because it's 10 to the hours of 2 right now, clock watching. However, you created a movement called WeRe Bank, and your creation of the WeRe Bank was based on energy, and you issued checks and what was it called? Allonges?
The allonge is something like everybody seems to get confused with it. An allonge is just something from the French allonger that goes along the side. So it's something that accompanied the in inverted commas, the check.
Okay. And yes. Also, you backed it up with the Bills of Exchange Act and various other things which actually got you sailing through the whole banking system. I remember the Times writing an article about your checks and saying they tried to castigate, and at the end of it they said, well, if people want to use it, that's entirely up to them. But they certainly didn't prosecute you because there was nothing they could do, because you knew all the rules of engagement, so to speak, and basically you was able to fly by with your WeRe Bank. So, maybe you could give us a little taster now, and then we can continue after the news and views.
Okay, I'll try and do this within 5 or 7 minutes before running up to the top of the hour.
Sure.
Yes, the creation WeRe Bank was a private banking system offered to the people as a means to show them how they were the creators of money, how they were the creators of energy, and it was not a private bank called the Bank of England operating within the square mile within the City of London. And the way to do this was born out by the idea that there is no money in the world. The only thing that has ever bought anything for anyone ever is what's called goods and services.
Yes.
So if you try and look at what money is, it's nothing more than a store of wealth or a medium of exchange. And if two people agree to exchange oranges or pebbles on a beach or little glass trinkets for beaver hides in Canada, then that is a system of exchange of money. So the monopoly that was born about by the Bank of England's what's called Bank Charter Act in 1844 was only supposed to give the Bank of England a temporary right to issue notes. And this is something we'll either touch on today or we'll touch on the next time we speak.
Sure.
Because in effect there are two types of money in existence, and it's one thing that I've come across and had brought to my attention by some very interesting people. And without that single knowledge, then going down sometimes the promissory note method or an international promissory note or issuing a bill of exchange will or will not work. So what I looked at is the Bills of Exchange Act for the United Kingdom, and then the International Convention on Bills of Exchange and International Promissory Notes, the 1988 United Nations Convention. And if you go through these documents, you will see that there is something called a private banker, which is designated as anyone involved in the business of banking. So, just like you can be called a gardener if you mess around in your garden, or you can be called a cook if you do cooking, or a painter if you do painting, then you can also be a banker. And it's everybody's duty and responsibility to start or take responsibility for looking after their own financial affairs. So with that being in mind, what we looked at is the following, or what I looked at is the following. If you've got a £5 or £10 note in your hand right now, wherever you are in London, just pull it out your pocket, or if it's in your hand, then you don't have to pull it out your pocket, but just grab hold of your £10 note and you just click it like this, and it's called what? It's cash, yes? It's cash, it's legal tender. However, what it is, it's a promissory note.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this thing that we've been bamboozled into accepting is like the Buddhists would say, when the finger points at the moon, don't confuse the finger with the moon. So everybody's walking around paying for things with promissory notes. And my contention was that as far as I knew, there are not 2 degrees of promise on the planet. When a man gives a promise to do something, it doesn't matter whether he's in the African savannah, it doesn't matter whether he's in the centre of New York or he's in the City of London. A promise is a promise.
Absolutely.
There are not degrees of it. When you go into a court of law for a repossession on your house, they don't say to you, what extent was the promise? Was it a really sincere promise, Mr. King, or was it just a pretend promise? Nobody gives a damn.
Yeah.
You made a promise, and the promise is backed up by the signature. So, on the way that the WeRe Bank was actually formulated was the following, very simply, that the individual, instead of going to the major high street banks and signing a promissory note in the bank for a loan of so-called money, which in fact is not a loan, but he is creating his own cash for him. And for anyone in doubt there, look at 2014 Bank of England, so 2016 I think, Bank of England first quarterly report, money in modern society, I think it's called. It actually shows that money comes into being when the individual or the borrower asks for it, not as people used to think. So the banks admit that they don't actually lend any money because there's no money to be lent, and there's only 2% of all money is cash anyway. It would be an impossibility for them to lend the amounts that they claim that they have.
Can I just say, Peter, sorry, just on the back of that, it's also stated by the Treasury Department that we're actually using fiat currency. So you're absolutely right. It's not money as we perceive it to be. You're absolutely right.
No, and so if you want to challenge the Treasury, if you want to challenge any organisation, simply ask them to give you a definition of money. Absolutely. It will be almost impossible. So what I decided to do was to simply ask the individuals to, instead of going to the high street bank, to come to another service provider, another bank, produce their promissory note, which WeRe Bank would then hand as a referee, as an in-between, as an auditor, to show that they were acting responsibly, and they weren't signing check amounts for amazingly crazy amounts, but that they were operating within a loan structure that most people would possibly feel comfortable in being able to, in inverted commas, handle over a certain period of time. And this is why the trolls got very excited about it, and why legal departments of high street banks were phoning me up telling me what I could and couldn't do. But the long and short of it, WeRe Bank is going, it's still going strong. It's 4 years into its nativity now, yes. And nobody has tried to close it down, and nobody ever will, because it is the one thing that the financial elite will not go near in a court of law, because they'll have to then demolish their entire structure, their entire financial, economic and commercial architecture will have to be destroyed by their own hand to undo what WeRe Bank says it can do, which in effect is just dogging or shadowing their system.
Fantastic. So in effect, WeRe Bank has the green light and it's running well.
Well, nobody's actually come along and said it's a green light. However, nobody said that it isn't. And the special investigation departments in the City of London, the fraud office, the fraud squad, haven't touched it or phoned me or even come near me, and won't. And the other part to that is...
okay, Peter, sorry.
Ben Bernanke's statement as to what a shadow bank is, shadow banks operate outside the system, and as long as we're not trying to provide financial products and savings and investment products, anyone can set up a private bank anywhere.
If you know how to. All right, listen, we're going to go to the news and views, Peter. We're going to come back on the other side, and we've got a lot of ground to cover today. I want to thank you thus far for airing and sharing. It's been absolutely brilliant. Folks, if you've got any questions, you know how we do. We'll take them after news and views, where you send in your texts and Peter will answer. But like I say, we've got a lot of ground to cover today. Peter's got a lot of information that he wants to dispense. And, so we will do that after the news and views. As we say, don't touch that dial. We'll be back and catch you after the news and views. All right? And tell a friend.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were all meant to shine as children do. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Okay, then we are back after the news and views. Thank you all for your listening ears. Thank you for your calls off air. We're speaking currently with Peter of England. Some of you may know him, some of you may not know him. Nevertheless, we're in dialogue and we're talking on some subject matters that I think you clearly may well have an interest. So we're back on after the news and views. Peter, welcome back. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be on this Omega Radio in London, and I thank everybody who's listening and taking the trouble to further their own knowledge and understanding of just how the world got into the mess it is seemingly in.
Absolutely. Before the news and views, we were actually talking about the WeRe Bank and the checks that you issue. Tell us some of the successes with the checks that people's actually used them to discharge debts or money owed or whatever you. Can you give us any background on that?
Yeah. Initially, what happened is that the success ratio for the checks, as we will call them now, which cleared, was of quite high proportions. And what happened is, as more and more of the shill and the trolling community were directed to combat this so-called phenomenon, what happened is more and more people were speaking about the successes of what had been paid for and what had been cleared from mainly credit cards, from bank loans through car financing, maybe child support and taxes. And what happened is that these individuals would post on social media like Facebook or Twitter or wherever, and the trolls would actually hunt them down and find out what details they could, and then get in touch with these councils. Council tax was doing very well as a payment scenario, credit card companies, MasterCard and Barclays. And so what they do is they point out the fact that they'd accepted something that was not regulated by the Bank of England or the Financial Compliance Authority, make all sorts of accusations, and then sure enough what would happen is these processes in many cases got reversed. However, WeRe Bank was quite phenomenally successful, and within a short time, within the first year, we had around about 6,500 members come on board in 32 countries worldwide.
Glorious.
So specifically, the areas that seem to be the most fruitful for the presenters of the LLTs, as we call them, not checks, which stands for lawful and illegal tendering, were in most instances for credit card payments, for taxes particularly, and also for council tax in the UK. So that worked very well, but as the phenomenon became more and more a troubling threat to the establishment or the banking cartel which operates and is controlled out of the City of London, then bigger guns were brought to bear in the form of more trolling, more people just coming out of the woodwork, making more accusations, false stories being fed to the money mail, various mainstream media, prostitute organizations, which then really started to undermine the basis of what we've been doing. But it was always an education, and it was always to show people what it was that was the nature of money, and basically to say to people, you don't have to go to a high street bank, you do not have to ask them for fictitious extension of credit, you can do it yourself, and I say many did. The main thing to remember is that WeRe Bank did not issue checks itself. It only gave to the individual who had pledged a promissory note for us to hold as security for them. So WeRe Bank was really just like the umpire or the referee holding the thing of value. And if you say, oh, well, it can't be of value, well, it can, and a BBC interview most certainly exposed the fact that a promissory note, if duly complied with and duly signed and noted and dated, is a valid and enforceable financial legal instrument. So if the nature of the promissory note was the fact that it was valid, then that which subtended from it, the check or the LLT as it was called, must also have had value. The only reason that there was such pressure put on for not allowing it is because it broke every single rule that the establishment had relied on for the last so many hundred years.
Congratulations.
That was that no private individual would be allowed to, in fact, be involved in the creation of the money supply since the Bank Charter Act of 1844, which was a monopolistic takeover by the Bank of England of the entire money supply of England, Wales, and to some extent Scotland.
Awesome, absolutely awesome, Peter, and congratulations and well done. Absolutely.
Yes.
You know, so if for example people want to learn more about WeRe Bank, where should they go?
Okay, what I'd like to do now is just to say to everybody, all these website addresses now, which I'm going to give to you, obviously all have the www in front of them. But to save time, I'm just going to run through them. First of all, there is WeRe Bank, WeReBank, werebank.co.uk. They can go to that site. That is the one which obviously deals with WeRe Bank and its offers. Then we have another one, which is the political arm that was the umbrella that encompassed WeRe Bank, and that is one called Removement. So it's REMOVEMENT, removement.net. That also offers political ideology on what we're about and what we think issues you should be addressing should be. Now, also for people who are interested in participating or potentially becoming a private banker, then there's the International Association of Private Bankers website, which is IAOPB.org. And for anyone who's interested in legal solutions and ways that we can help you through the legal malaise which has engrossed the British judicial and legal circus, I'd point their attention to, this is all one word, freemanlegalservices.com. So Freeman, Freeman, legalservices.com. And to back all this up, we are offering to bring a unique concept of grand jury and common law court petitioning to the people, and they can have a look there at something called the International Common Law Court of Record .org. So that's ICLCOR 750181.org. I'll repeat that, ICLCOR 750181.org. So I've given 5 websites there. If there's any information that people want, if they would like to make a note of this email, then they should send all inquiries, placing in the subject line Omega Radio. With that, we will know where it came from. So it's admin1, that's ADMIN, and it's a numeral 1, at freemanlegalservices.com. And place in the subject line Omega Radio. So there is a lot of things there for people to digest and go and have a look at. And as you know something about them, King, then I'll allow you now to ask whatever questions you need to as a lead on from WeRe Bank, or what the relationship then is with either real estate or mortgaging and paying off credit card or debt generally. Can it work? Does it work? Why it will work? Why it won't work?
Fantastic, Peter. Absolutely fantastic. I do want you to touch on the mortgage support system that you have in place to help folks who, because currently what's happening, Peter, I'm not sure if you're up to speed with it, but there's a massive land grabbing going on, and people are losing their houses because so-called bailiffs are coming around with dodgy paperwork which looks like it's come from the court, it's not been stamped, not been sealed, and as a result many people have lost their property. Some for minimal amounts of monies, but somehow the racketeering that's going on out here it's causing a lot of hardship, a lot of pain, and I know people right now who have nowhere to sleep because they've lost their house which they've worked for all their life. And you know, based on what we was discussing about mortgages and what have you, could you elaborate, and how could that help somebody who's been basically bamboozled out of their house by fraudulent paperwork?
Okay, right. One of the main things for anyone with a mortgage is first probably to go onto the land registry site and just for a fee of £3 find out who the service provider is on the the title deed, and that only costs £3. You can pay for it, obviously, with your credit card. And what that will make sure is that the initial situation that the person or company that you are making your monthly payment to is the same as is stated on the deed title. And if it's different, then that is a fraud offence, which used to be under the 1968 as amended Theft Act, which is obtaining pecuniary advantage by deception. Because in many instances what's happened is that once a bank or financial institution gets taken over, it can't go or does not go to the trouble of amending the bundle of mortgage documents that it's inherited or taken over the handling of. So that's one point. Taking that aside, two things that people need to do. One is to begin to take the law into their own hands in a very meaningful and productive way. And that's out of what's called Section 61 of Magna Carta, and also something called Statute the 5th, 1315, which both pieces of legislation are still active. They're still on the HM government legislation.gov website, and in effect what they do is they prevent any property being taken from a human being, a man, without due process of the law, which is a jury trial by a jury of his peers, noted, of his peers. And that peers means in his local community.
Yes.
Not if you're, if the property is located in Brighton, you have a jury trial in London. It's always local to you. So these items, particularly as far as the mortgage mayhem or mess is concerned, is really to begin to step in and become a predator against the bank or a plaintiff at the earliest possible opportunity, and not wait for them to start knocking on your door and sending the bailiff. So how you do this is two main ways. WeRe Bank, through Freeman Legal Services, is offering a service, and that service is twofold. One, it will either allow you to create an international promissory note whereby you offer a payment to the either the service provider or the should we say that the holder of the mortgage. Okay, that's route one. So that is a offer to pay, and what you are doing there, and this is the crux of the matter, you are offering to pay the loan off in exactly the same specie of money that it was issued in. So, for example, if I came to your house and borrowed a cup of sugar, you would probably expect me to come and repay you with a cup of sugar, correct?
Correct.
And if I came and borrowed a very nice suit off you to go to the prom or whatever, and it got ruined, you'd expect me to replace it with a suit of exactly the same dimensions and nature.
Absolutely.
It goes without saying. So this is a very important point and the crux of what we offer here. When you look at there's two things. There's the mortgage deed, and then there is the promissory note or the repayment schedule that was attached to it. Both of these things should not be separated of it. One is a securitization of the property or the deed of title for the property, and one is an agreement to pay money. Now, nowhere will it say in the bank document that you were asked to sign, and bear in mind the bank should have signed it as well, and if it hasn't, then there's a problem there.
There's no contract, is there?
Provisions Act.
There's no contract if they haven't signed it, Peter, surely.
Yeah, exactly. So the part there is that nowhere in the so-called contract, which is a fraudulent contract because it hasn't revealed all the terms and conditions, fraudulent though it might be, nowhere does it say in what specie or type of money does it need to be repaid? They will try and say that you must produce a bank order, you must produce a bank gyro credit or some other interbank transfer. But that's just like one ice cream salesman saying that he only accepts a particular type of coinage, when in fact you can present whatever you wish as long as it's lawful tender. So that's the first part. The fact is that a lot of these providers do not have the original documentation, and what's called securitization has taken place, that the mortgages have been bundled up and the mortgage-backed securities that have funded it have been sold on down the line, and so they can't produce the original document. So if they can't produce the original document to prove that they are the what's called holder in due course on the note, then there's no responsibility for you to repay. The analogy to that would be, if I came to your house now, King, and said, could you lend me £100? You'd be very happy to do it. I know you would.
True indeed.
Maybe you would say, well, Peter, could you please just sign this little piece of paper? It's like an IOU, just saying, that I've lent you 100 and you can pay me back whenever you want. No problem, no pressure, mate. Yeah? Does that sound fair?
Absolutely.
Right, okay. And everyone would agree. So, however, I come back 4 or 5 months later and I say, King, I've had some good luck on the GGs, and I've got the ability to pay you back now. Here's £100 back, thank you very much. And I'm just about to leave your house and I say, oh, by the way, could I have my promissory note back? Because I promised to pay you the money, yeah?
Correct.
And you turn around and say to me, don't worry about that, Peter, I'll take care of it, or I can't find it right now, or alternatively, how about this A4 photostated copy of it? Well, if I accepted that and left you, anything could happen. You could drop dead, you could go away around the world, and someone else could then pick up the original note and come and confront me with it and say you still haven't paid. So if any district judge or magistrate says that a copy of the documents is sufficient, then please use this argument against them. A copy is only a copy. It's the original that has to be produced. So that's the first or second line of defense.
Interesting.
So hopefully it isn't getting too complicated for people here, but what we're saying here is the first initial overtures from Freeman Legal Services are, one, for you to find out what ground you stand on, for you to then become predatory, for you to become the plaintiff. So on that, you offer to pay. And what you're doing is 2 lines of pressure now. One is you are offering to pay, and the payment would take the form of an international promissory note compiled in a particular way for you to send to the company for them to receive a tendering of payment under the Bills of Exchange Act. Now, don't forget, tendering is a noun, doesn't have to be a verb. You are tendering, and you also are tendering something. So,
okay, Peter, let me stop you there for a moment. Just for clarity, break down tendering in terms of its definition of what it means.
Well, probably one of the best ways of tendering is let's just see.
I mean, could we say it's like pending? Payment is pending. I know it's 2 different animals.
Let's make it very, very succinct for everybody. There is something called Uniform Commercial Code, UCC. It's the trading code for the planet. Most people would try and argue that it's only relevant in the United States, but we'll use it now as a model. Anyone listening out there, please go and look up on the Cornell Law School University website, or just type in UCC 3603. That's Article 3, Paragraph 603, and it's called Tender of Payment.
Right.
And I will just quote very briefly from it. If tender of payment of an obligation to pay an instrument is made to a person entitled to enforce the instrument, the effect of tender is governed by principles of law. If a tender of payment of an obligation to pay an instrument is made to a person entitled to enforce the instrument, and the tender is refused, note, if it is refused, then there is discharge to the extent of the amount of the tender of an endorser or accommodation party having a right of recourse with respect, etc. I won't go on. So, in effect, once you tender a payment, if it isn't accepted, i.e. if it's turned away, then you are discharged from the obligation.
Okay, so, now I want to say, sorry for interjecting, Peter, because I know it's in your flow. I had a situation where I created my own promissory note, and I used it. I presented it to the council, my local council. They were puzzled by it because they'd never seen one. They held on to it. And I think they held on to it for a period of 3 or 4 weeks, running around trying to ascertain what it is and how do we deal with this. In the end, Peter, they returned it back to me. And as far as I was concerned, they discharged it, just by holding on to it. But, I still ended up having to pay, which I'm still questioning at the moment. I must have done something wrong in order for them not to honour it. But like you say, in reference to what you've quoted, they had a duty and an obligation to accept it under the tendering, right?
Yeah, and this is the problem that they have the might and so they have the right. Most people don't know how to continue an argument. They give up very, very easily. I'm not saying this is an instance for you, but what happens is many people turn around with a letter comes back from the council says, we are not allowed to accept such pieces of paper or documents. You must pay with these 3 particular methods. The local councils are nothing just but corporations, and if you go and look in the memoranda and articles
of association.
Memorandum and Articles of Association, you'll see that they can accept virtually anything from oranges through to promissory notes to shows in action to commercial paper. They can accept anything as a form of payment.
I just want to say, Peter,
the idea is
on the back of that, Peter, I actually had the Bills of Exchange Act written on it and all sorts of stuff. So, it was legal, and they should have accepted it.
The next part then is the nature of who's actually tendering the money. Don't forget, as part of the estate, you are just a collateral asset within the estate. You are within a ward, which are the 650 electoral wards. An award is a ward of care. What ward means is you are under the care of one of the members of Parliament, and the parishes became the wards. The parishes were succeeded by the wards, and this came out of what's called the Poor Law Reform Acts and laws of the 19th century, later part. So, in effect, you are deemed to be a pauper, you're deemed to be insane, incompetent, and have no rights whatsoever to manage any of your affairs. So, regardless of what you read and regardless of what you send, if you don't come at them from a proper perspective of a natural person, take that back, not as a natural person, as a natural human being,
yes.
And refute Article 6 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says every person, every human being, or every human being, I think, has a right to be regarded as a person in law. Something like that.
But there's a twist in that, though, Peter, because obviously a person reverts you back into a corporation, doesn't it? So it's a play on words again. So it's a very tricky system. But I tell you, it's navigating through the sea of this madness that we're obviously trying to get through. But do continue, Peter.
So Article 6 of the Declaration says everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Article 6, so just so that I could quote that correctly. So what we offer from a perspective is you change the nature of your entity status into a private banker. So under international and national commercial law, you have the right to be a private banker. So if people want to go to the IAOPB.org, India Alpha Oscar Papa Bravo.org website, they will get a brief resume of what actually becoming a private banker entails. So once you become a private banker, you change your status before the courts. Because now what you're doing is you're tendering an instrument not as a pauper or a lunatic or a ward of the state or some other delinquent degenerate, as the Masonic bench would look at you as, and bearing in mind for all the Masonic people,
one of the terms
they all go through a ceremony of rebirth and death within the lodges too. So,
but Peter, sorry. Pete, they deem us as infants. We have no talk, hence why we have to get somebody to speak on our behalf, i.e. a solicitor.
Yeah, and that's why you can be held in contempt of court, because you have no right to speak in the court at all. All in fact what's happening in a court of law is the Catholic doctrinaire sacrament of confession, where the judge, dressed in black invariably, acts as the priest, the prosecutor acts as the person revealing or speaking on your behalf the sins that you supposedly committed, and prosecutix means for or out of the flesh, and the executor, executor, means that which is out of the flesh, which is the judge, and the defense is simply there as someone who speaks for you as if they are holding a seance, with you speaking from the dead.
Wow. Because that's how we're deemed.
And that's what you have in front of you. And when you go into any court, it's even set out the same. The pews, the benches, the judge sitting up on the priest, higher than everyone else, like the priest. So all you're doing is participating in what's called the 12 presumptions of a Roman Curia court. And if you don't rebut the 12 presumptions, then they stand and you just get fed to the chickens as if you were nothing. So this is what I'm trying to offer people. You have to combat these people because they exist in a very, very closed and very technically operated system which has thousands of years of sacred and debauched, unfortunately, knowledge, which is based on numerology, which is based on trickery, and which is based on almost every diabolical trick that you could imagine. So the Justinian deception is all about words, where you think it's one thing, but it's actually something else.
Absolutely.
So please, people, if you do nothing else, maybe just send us an email and we'll try and point you in the right direction so that you can become better educated as to what you're dealing with. But when you're in a magistrate's court, and don't forget, magistrate's courts account for 97% of all litigation in the country. Once you go into a magistrate's court, you are just like you're walking into the head office of Coca-Cola or Amazon or Screwfix. It's private bylaws that they're imposing upon you to tell you what they think you should do. And they're only there to do one thing, and that's to get money from you as the trustee of the estate.
Absolutely.
The trustee does the paying, the beneficiary does the benefiting. Why is it that you pay for everything? From your passport, through to your TV license, through to your road fund license, to your driving license, you pay for everything.
Well,
why? Why are you doing the paying?
Exactly. I want to take you back to a point, Peter, in regarding rebutting the 12 presumptions. What are those 12 presumptions?
Well, they're a little bit too... Well, I don't know whether I would say that they're... I wouldn't know whether we can cover them all now.
Well, if we can't,
for people, but
if we can't,
I'll try and
put like this.
Put them best. There's the main presumptions are probably one is a presumption of public record, and that's a presumption that when you go into the court, that everything you're saying is on the public record, whereas it isn't. The magistrates don't make notes; they don't take notes. You could send letters in and everything, and on the day you arrive, and he's got nothing in front of him, and they don't take notes. They're not bothered.
That's correct.
The next one is what's called presumption of public service, that the actual individual is actually operating as well-intentioned towards you and is not a member of a private bar or guild. In fact, he is a member of a private bar, and he's then taken an oath to the privately. So unless you ask them to rebut it or you rebut it, you'll fall under that jurisdiction. Then there's a presumption of public oath, and that is a public official acting in a right to serve the public in the best of his ability.
Yes.
However, as it's a private bar guild matter, unless you put him on that oath, and this is what people do in the wrong way, they fall foul of it. Then there's a presumption of immunity that these private bar guild members, acting in their capacity as public officials or judges, prosecutors, magistrates, that they are immune from personal claims of injury or liability. So that's basically him sitting there, stating that he can in effect do what he wants with
Can I stop you there?
Not the case.
Can I stop you there, Peter? These magistrates and judges, do they have a liability insurance for wrongdoing if they've, if they've given that in the wrong sentence?
And there's something basically called a writ of quo warranto. And what a writ of quo warranto means is that you have to ask the judge to vindicate or prove that he has the competency to try a particular thing in his court. So, for example, let's say you go into a court and it's a repossession hearing and you're in front of the magistrate or the district judge, because it's got a little bit more serious now and he's coming to give the final say. You're actually sitting there thinking this is a way that you're going to receive justice, and it doesn't matter really what you try and say, or maybe you might try and make off a payment, he's not satisfied with it and he's going to find against you. However, what a very good tactic would be is to actually inform the judge that the actual property is being sold. And what you might do then is for him to say, well, no, that's not possible, you can't sell it, you don't have the right to sell it. Because what will happen then is he wants to know who you've sold it to. So, in effect, what you do is you get the legal title, the straw man,
yes,
let's say John Jones, all capitals, that's submitted before the magistrate or the district judge by giving his date of birth, his address, and his full name. You basically then state that the legal title has been sold, and who it's been sold to is the common law human being of the same or similar name called
blah
John
blah
Jones.
blah. Yeah, the flesh and blood, and blood sentient being.
Yeah. So what you do then is you don't just do that on the day. You actually have a piece of paper in your hand witnessing the sale and have it attested by a common law court. So what you've done now, you've done something very, very different. You are now standing in front of a judge stating that you are a natural human being, but you've also, and this is the trump card, you're handing to him or showing him that you have a piece of paper from a common law court.
Yes.
And a common law court, or a common law court of record, is the highest known court of law in the land. It is higher than the Supreme Court, it is higher than all the districts and the Magistrates' Court and the Crown Courts, and it is a fundamental part of the British Constitution that its judgments cannot be overturned. And please also bear in mind, if it's done correctly, a jury has the permission and the precedent that it can also deal with matters of fact as well as law. Most people think they can only concern themselves with fact. It's been shown time and time again that a duly convened grand jury, in fact, can, and with a petite jury, a small jury, they can overturn matters of law.
Fantastic.
They can say the law is wrong, we are changing it here and now. That is our precedent. That will follow forward into the future.
Question, Peter. How old is that grand jury system?
The grand jury system goes back to Magna Carta.
1215?
1216 or around.
And how?
And also, if people look at this, it's on the website. I think it's on the Freeman Legal Services website. So please go and visit it. Have a rummage through. Do something constructive over the weekend instead of not. And you'll find also something called Statute the 5th, 1315. If you want to look at the Sebi V Act 1666, Section 4, that's also something that should be of interest, reclaiming your estate as a person who was deceased and has now returned from the dead. Because this is what you operate on, and I will just keep repeating this as many times as I can either remember or do from time to time on these discussions. Please note that all the 33-degree Freemasons, all the Masons that are involved in the what's called the supranational lodges, the Ur lodges, all the people who go through this Masonic rigmarole.
We're losing your.
On the third degree,
sorry,
they all do their resurrection.
Peter, sorry, we're just losing your sound quality a little bit. Can you speak up a little bit more, please? Because we're just losing your sound quality.
Hang on, let's do what. Can you still hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, it's suddenly gone a little bit muffly.
Yeah. Maybe somebody's.
There you go. No, we're back on track. We're back on track, Peter. We're fine.
Okay, so what people finally must realise is that all of these are Masonically connected, what's called worshippers these days of the doctrine of Thelma, which is the Aleister Crowley teachings, which is all diabolically satanic. They all within the Masonic lodges, which have all been infiltrated and all corrupted by this Crowleyism. They all do. Not that this is a Crowleyism in and of itself, but they all do this birth and rebirth, the death and the rebirth within the degree, and that gives them the ideological and the rite of passage now to operate as a reborn, enlivened individual that has the right to do whatever it wants to the sheeple as and when. So I hope that answers that part.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Peter. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We got 5 minutes before the news and views, Pete. It's the time has really flown. It's amazing.
Yeah.
In relation to somebody's texting about Brexit and what's your views on Brexit, and hang on a minute, let's see. Okay, how can the text sender says, King, ask your guest the best thing we can do to prepare for Brexit, and that comes from Murray.
Okay. The best thing about Brexit is it's a complete misdirection for the people of the United Kingdom.
I agree.
What's happening here is an affront to common sense, and it's an affront to justice, and it's an affront to the people in the fact that one thing and one thing only, maybe people don't travel, they don't know what the exchange rate is from the British pound to the euro, but the British travelling public, the British commercial interest, the British industry has been decimated over the last 2 years of haranguing by the fact that as soon as the people gave their decision that they wanted to leave this Gestapo-controlled New World Order, stateless, borderless, Frankenstein entity, which is called the European Union.
Yeah. As
soon as they did that, they got punished. But they got punished for what? So why did the British pound against the euro trading at 135, 145? Why did it suddenly, within a matter of weeks, go down to ridiculous lows where you go to the exchange rate? The exchange window at the local airport, and you're lucky if you get €1 for £1. And it's for no reason. And who's done this? Nothing other than the Soros, Rothschild-controlled European Central Bank and Bank of England, Mark Carney brigade, who are there all to blame and point the finger in a particular direction. So getting ready for Brexit, my personal view is that there's a lot of things going on in the background. There's a lot of things going on with the Trump organization, which a lot of people... I can understand he's one of the few politicians ever that wasn't a politician but decided to give it a go. He's caused a lot of upset. All the people who are anti-Trump out there, all the people who are saying terrible things about the guy, whether it's right or whether it's wrong isn't the point. The fact of the matter is, ask yourself one simple question. If you didn't want him to have won the election, would you have wanted Hillary Clinton in the White House?
Good question. And on that,
you would have been, and this is the thing, that's why I like your Morpheus speech about the people who don't want to be disconnected from the Matrix. Every single one of you, stand up, look in the mirror. If you're anti-Trump, then you are pro-Clinton. By definition. Fact, unequivocal, black and white, no wiggle room, and that's what you're supporting. Absolute satanic, spirit cooking, child molestation, child trafficking, satanic ritual, murder of children.
You got less than 7 seconds,
across the
Pete.
paedophile networks in total.
Right, we're gonna fly to the news and views, Peter. We will come back on the other side. It's all about knowledge for life, knowledge elevating, empowering, and strengthening the community. Again, we have the great man on the phone, Peter of England, sharing some fantastic nuggets with us this afternoon. And Peter, welcome back. How are you doing, sir?
Excellent, thank you very much. Enjoying my time on the radio today. It's a long time since I did an interview, and I'm glad to be talking to you again after the most enjoyable past we had in the old days when we were when we went, I think, along that time to the People's Voice. Remember the David Icke attempt to bring a similar broadcast platform like Alex Jones's InfoWars in the United States to England.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, it didn't work, but it's glad to see a good station like 104.1, or is it 104.10?
Well, it's 104, absolutely, all the way. Absolutely.
Omega Radio,
Absolutely.
leading the others by a furlong.
There you go. And this is how we do. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Peter, so before we went to the news and views, we were actually talking about the mortgage and what have you. We touched a little bit on the mortgage stuff. Could you just elaborate a little bit more in terms of how you would dispense with mortgages in terms of the service that you are offering via Freeman Legal Services? What is it that you can actually do to help people, considering now that we've discovered that the mortgage documentation is not fit for purpose because it's not a contract, because it's only signed by one individual, which is yourself, as opposed to how do people get themselves out of it? And will they keep the house? And can they go back and collect all the money that they've paid because the fact that there was no contract in the first instance? And I know it's a loaded question, but equally we understand once you sign, they actually hand in the documentation and get paid the following day based off of your signature. Is that so?
That final question again.
Sorry about that. I was just trying to get so much in because we've got such little time. But in relation to somebody actually getting taking charge of the mortgage, based on the fact that the document is not fit for purpose, and would they be able to get their money back based on the fact that there was no contract?
Probably not, because what you've got to remember is that the entire satanic Zionist regime of the Babylonian and Genovese, Venetian banking operations that have been put together over the many centuries are all based upon a lie, and all based on the fact that they don't want you to expose that lie. So the last thing that any court is going to do is allow the system to openly be violated. And that's why in the last, let's say, 20 years, there's been over 3.5 million repossessions, and all these have gone into magistrates or district courts, and not one individual, not one defendant has ever succeeded in defeating the banks. So it's a loaded theatre, a scenario whereby you never ever are going to be allowed to win in a conventional manner. However, that's not to say it can't be done in other ways, and one of the best ways to try and do it is, or to effect it, is something called a quiet title. And if you don't know what that is, just type it into Google, because that seems to be the wise man wants the kit now for the wise man's human. So if you go and look at quiet title is a negotiation practice whereby in return for you agreeing not to pursue the service provider or the mortgage provider with a criminal complaint, they allow you to take what's called take the title, in fact have the mortgage in effect cancelled. So there's a mortgagor, obviously, as we know, and there's a mortgagee, the two parties to this supposed contract, and so one of them is suddenly wearing the wrong suit of clothes. The main thing also to bear in mind is that when you actually sign the promissory note or the agreement to make the payments on a monthly basis to the mortgage company, there is a fraud that's committed at that point on the desk, and that fraud is that they have led you fraudulently, with what's called fraudulent misrepresentation, to believe that you are contributing nothing whatsoever of value to the deal. The next thing is that they are also fraudulently trying to pretend that they are lending you money, and they're not lending you money at all. All they're doing is supposedly extending credit on the credit note that you have provided.
Right.
So the main question that we delve with on that point is, at the moment that the mortgage document was signed, when it was then entered onto the books of the so-called lender, was it entered as an asset or was it entered as a liability? And from that answer to that question, with a mathematical certainty as 0 or 1, follows everything else. So if we are allowed, and we are allowed to pursue on that grounds through what's called a forensic audit or something called a fraudit, then what we will do is we will show quite categorically that the bank committed fraud by entering into your account a minus instead of a plus. So this is all part of the Venetian Genovese double entry bookkeeping practices that are the essence of usury, and which used to be only allowed in certain very, very rare instances and condoned by the Catholic Church, but now it's taken on full swing, and this rabid commercialization tactic is allowed to go and prosper. So that's in effect where we would address it. So the next point then is there are two ways to go after the mortgage company or the bank, whichever one has lent you supposedly, in inverted commas, money.
Yes.
One is to offer to pay it off with an international promissory note drawn on an instruction. Let's use the United Kingdom as an example. An instruction to HM Treasury to make the payment on your behalf out of a particular fund, which is backed up by proof that that fund exists and it's got your name next to it, and amounts are in that fund.
So that you're talking.
Other alternative.
Are you speaking? Sorry, Peter. Are you speaking about your trust account? Because everyone's got a trust account. Is that what we're referring to?
It's sometimes mistakenly called that. However, I don't want to say this on air because I don't want to
that's
give the
cool.
opposition
That's cool. That's
straight
cool.
away.
That's fine. No problem.
An idea where it goes, but everybody with a couple of two prime documents, social security number and your birth certificate, will show that there are traded securities with your name against them, and these are tradable and traceable on the United States Stock Exchange through the SEC, and they're all coded, and they identify which funds you're supposedly invested in. So everyone has a value, and that value is what you are deemed to be worth in the system from the time you're born till the time you die. And you might say, well, what's a baby? Well, how can a baby be worth anything? Well, a baby needs nappies, it needs pushchairs, it needs education, it needs pharma, it needs operations, it needs vaccines pumping into it. It's got a price. So that's why every human has got a price on its head, and the Rothschild banking cartel look at you as nothing more than a light bulb, a 100-watt light bulb that needs a particular amount of energy to sustain it for a period of 24 hours, which comes in at about 2.5 kilowatt. And that's what you're looked at. How much energy is required out of the system to keep one of you burning, or 64 million of you burning. That's all you're looked at as a what's called capacitance and inductance within a electrical circuit.
Do you know, Peter?
So when people when people say it can't be fathomed, it can't be worked out, nobody knows what's going on, they do, and it's all to do on the fact that the universe is electrical. It's an electrical universe we live in, and you are electric.
Absolutely.
And that's why the rationale of the battery at the Matrix has got a deeper meaning than most people give it credit for.
Gotcha. There's a point.
The scenario. One, we either have you issue the international promissory note, which then they can argue against the toss whether it's valid or not in a court, or secondly, WeRe Bank will buy your debt or your mortgage document from you. And the WeRe Bank aspect to it is that just like when you want to change your credit card provider, when you want to change your bank, invariably people have a debt with the bank or on the credit card, and the service provider that you're going to, so if you're changing from Barclays or you're going to Lloyd's TSB, they will happily take the debt on the card and possibly offer you a special rate of return for transferring your business to them. In effect, WeRe Bank comes along and states, we will take upon our shoulders the mortgage debts of anyone who wishes to transfer them to us, and you will relieve yourself of your debt obligation. And that comes under two sections within the Bills of Exchange Act. One is what's called referee in case of need, and one other is what's called a payer for honor supra protest. So in effect what we're doing is we're stating to the other organisation, we will take on the funding or the debt obligation on the note, but what we do then is we go after the bank on the basis that they've committed fraud, and we become the plaintiff on your behalf. And on your behalf is what's called subrogation. Subrogation means we stand in your shoes and sue the bank for fraudulently claiming that they lent you money and created a mortgage that was completely and totally invalid.
Peter.
And so, will we win every time? Will we win? I can't say that as a certainty, and there are no guarantees. However, you have to fight. If you don't fight, you've already lost.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you do fight, then you can always win.
Question.
But if you don't fight at all, you've lost and it's gone. So the more people try it, the more that they do it, the more that their circuitous, serpentine system of lying will be exposed, and it is a time coming then the system is going to break one way or the other. We're all going to be either put on cattle carts and sent off to holding centres, or the light will break through and we will be victorious and hopefully live in a free energy paradise whereby we can all relax and only work the hours that we choose to work for something we believe in and idealise it.
And that's if there's any work for people when all these robots come on board and are replacing human beings. However, I wanted to ask the question in relation to this mortgage proposal that you're putting across. Has it been tried? Has it tested? Is there any success rates in regard to...
It's been very... I mean, we only started to offer this as an option in the earlier part of this year. That was like February, March. It's been done very, very successfully in two ways in the United States, which is has a very much stronger codification of the law under what's called United States Code, Uniform Commercial Code, House Joint Resolution. The other thing we'll talk about next time I come on, which is the actual cherry on top of the diamond on top of the pyramid pie, is the two natures of money. There are two sets of money circulating, and everybody is quite aware that there are notes and there are coins. Yes. And so there are very, very specific ways of addressing who is responsible for a payment. So every time a mortgage company, a high street bank specifies that you must pay them in a particular manner, that's because they're all tied in with the Bank of England. And that isn't money. And there is another type of money that if you make the instruction payment in this other type of money, it will virtually assure you of getting joinder with the enemy. I.e., they won't be able to ignore it and dismiss you and simply ride roughshod over you. They will have to take seriously what you're doing, because the instruction goes to HM Treasury. It doesn't go to anyone else.
Okay, Pete, I've got a text here. I've got a text for you. Hi, King. Sounds good. The whole planet is run the same way, cut up in zones. All the Queen's men. Ask Peter, with all the leaders apologising for various wrongdoings, the Golden Age re-enlightenment or light source, NEG, surely the paper world is done and all paper is gone, aka burnt. The show can't go on without people like batteries. It's not easier to obtain signatures and hustle the councils, particularly Council Tax Corporation. And that text comes in from 124. Did you hear that, Peter?
Okay, so just paraphrase what you would say that the crux of that question is for me.
Well, I guess it's more of a statement as opposed to a question, but the person has asked to ask you, with all the apologising that the leaders are doing regarding the Golden Age, surely it's the end of the paper world, and the show can't go on without the people.
Okay,
in a nutshell.
In effect, yes. This golden age is more probably in touch with the cycle of planetary evolution, because just as people are supposed to evolve and animals may evolve, so do planets and planetary systems and galaxies. And one of the big things is various precessional cycles, roughly around about 26,556 years in duration, when at the end of, just like the ticking of a clock, as the fingers approach midnight, then certain things are due to happen. And we are approaching one of those periods now where everyone seems to be going crazy and society is breaking down because there is no structure.
Absolutely.
The photonic energy that's coming into the planet is probably more of a Shiva type, left side of the face destructive type element than a building. So this is why we've got all this transgender issues and this chaos within society that people don't seem to be able to handle. And what's happening is a catalyst is being applied to people to then make them decide, as probably about 98% of this planet are undecided, like in the Matrix.
Yes.
But as Morpheus says, if you're undecided, you're working for them, not us, because the pawns in the industry or on the society are the ones that are protecting the people who are the status quo. So as to where it's all going to go, yes, ultimately it's going to break down, and one of the tasks that was set for President Obama in September 2016, he was offered the chance to make certain announcements about planetary potentially catastrophic events, but he refused. And unbeknownst to many people now, this is one of the reasons that the Trump agenda was allowed to run. And if people can't understand why he was ever allowed to get into the White House, this is one of the secret reasons behind it. And the fact that it was a military coup posed against or effected against the United States government around about September 2016, when Barack Obama was released from power, and the members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, particularly led by Joe Dunford, ex-Marine Corps, who's the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, are now in charge of the United States government. And he, in effect, with his colleagues like Mattison, Kelly, I think the other guy is, can't remember the names, De Silva, who's the vice chairman. These are all people who are in charge now and in effect running the show and preparing society for groundbreaking announcements on global warming issues. And that's one of the reasons that Donald Trump tried to made himself look like a lunatic to the rest of the world by openly withdrawing the United States from the global warming conferences and disassociating with the UN. So that's just to let everybody know there's a lot more of this to come for next time when we speak. I can't cover all these topics. Even
Absolutely.
in 3 hours, I couldn't carry them in 3 months.
Sure.
There's a lot of information that I have, and I haven't given any interviews. If you go on my YouTube channel, I haven't done a video for over a year now, and that's because I became a little bit, not so much despondent, but I just didn't see the fact that there was no traction in people's minds. But there could be more of a hopeful future for us all. But you've got to physically do something, get up off your backsides and go out there and do it. And I can offer a rallying cry, and I can offer a rallying position. And what I would like to do, because I'm not actually in the UK at the moment for maybe another week or two, is I'd like to get back to the UK, and I'd like to start holding rallies, and I'd like to start explaining to people what they need to do for us to change. And the entire government of the United Kingdom is ready to fall, and there's certain things happening behind the scenes where people have been put under house arrest. And for example, anyway, I'm going to.
All right. We'll not let the cat. We'll not let the cat out of the bag just yet, Peter. We'll put that on ice, as we say around here. However, there are two elements that I would like you to touch on just briefly, and one of them that really got my interest was when you deregistered your vehicle. Now, we touched on this last week, but you've actually done it. And can you tell us how and what the impact was, or the response was from the police and that? Because we saw you on the video where the police have pulled up side by side to you and asked you where was your plates, and you said you had your own private plates. And tell us the story. How did that happen?
Okay, well, first of all, what people should not forget is that the Peter of England phenomenon is just that. What I did before I decided to go from calling myself Peter Smith to Peter of England was that I first notified the Attorney General and various establishment figures like the Lord High Chancellor that I was at odds with the state, and I wanted a redress to my certain claims and rights as I saw it. So I gave a notice of claim, I did a notice of my rights, and I issued 3 documents successively over 1 month delayed periods, whereby I stated at the end of the 3rd document, if I hadn't satisfactorily had them addressed or had these situations cured, then that I would no longer be under any jurisdictional connectivity with the state, and therefore I would term myself a non-subject, non-citizen, non-resident alien. So no response was set forth, and so I started to go off and then decided, right, I will actually prove the validity of what I'd done. So first of all, I decided I was going to put my plates on the car, and then I wrote to, I think I wrote to 25 constabularies, to the chief constable of 23 or 25 constabularies of the constabularies that I would be passing through with my vehicle over the coming weeks, and notified them that I was not to be arrested or impeded or stopped in any way or hassled without express instructions from the Attorney General. So that's what the basis was, and off I went on my merry way, and that journey lasted the best part of 2 months, until one day
Hang on, sorry, Peter, hold that thought. We've got a live call at the minute. We'll take this call. I think we've got a question for you. Hold on. Good afternoon, caller. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's Felician here.
Hi, Phil. How you doing?
Me, I'm okay. So.
Okay. You've got a question for Peter. Peter, can you hear Felician?
I think so.
Okay. Felician, fire away. What's your question?
Okay, Peter. My question is the land registry. It's based on the land registry. The Bank of Scotland took away my house illegally, fraudulently. Anyway, Land Registry agreed with it, and they told me to send in an AP1 form, ID1 form, and other form. Okay, I sent all these in. It took 2 years for them to look through all the information. I even went to a fraud office, had all the paperwork checked, and they said that they saw the fraud and everything, and said to me, send the papers into the Land Registry. It took 2 years for the Land Registry to tell me that I'd have to go back to court, that there was nothing that they could do about the fraud, what was done was taken away with my house.
Did you get that, Pete?
Wow.
Yeah, this
yes,
is what
I did, and unfortunately, it's a story that's repeated all too often, with the fact that the land registry sometimes won't take responsibility.
So, sorry, 1 minute, Peter. She's having difficulty hearing, and your phone sounds just a little bit muffled. Can you just adjust your set a little bit, Pete, please?
Yeah, just hang on. So it's difficult to answer something like that specifically over the air like that, because there's so many nuances and so many alleys and byways that we could go down. Well, what I'll just do is suggest that lady sends the question, and I will try and answer it in an email, and then I can give a lot more sort of service to it than doing some sort of topping and tailing of it on the last minutes of the show. So she wants to send that to admin1@freemanlegalservices.com, but subject Omega Radio in the title. I'll answer that for her. But in effect, the only way back from a situation like that is to take the land registry to court as a plaintiff. You probably won't get any satisfaction by using the conventional magistrates or district court. So the best route would be to go and have a petition to a grand jury. That would be something that I would be very happy to come over and discuss with people in the London area, because something like that needs to be done. And once the grand jury has given its verdict, then we could then go find a most successful way of going after the land registry and bringing that person to a financial conclusion by them giving you back what they took from you, or allowed to be taken from you.
All right, Peter, she's saying she can't hear you, so what I'll do, I'll give her your email, and then she can email you the question and get it sorted that way.
What was the lady's name again?
Felician.
Okay.
Yeah. But she was also subject to living in London. Her case was taken out of the jurisdiction and taken to Birmingham.
Yeah.
You know, which is an oddity, but we discovered the corruption in the case. So again, Phil, what we'll do, we'll get you to email Peter, and then Peter can take it up that way, because clearly you can't hear him, and it's a disadvantage. So we'll do it. I'll speak to you after the show, and we'll get together, and I'll get that email. We'll put it together.
One more question with the court orders. As in, if he knows about court orders, can you change a court order once it's been set without the two parties being there?
Did you hear that, Peter?
Sorry, just say it again. Court order.
What she's saying is that she's got a court order bearing one date on it, but then she's got another court order supposedly of the same hearing with a different date on it. So there's two different dates on one court order that was given at different times. You know, both the court orders were posted out on different days, bearing allegedly for the same case, but bearing two different dates.
And name.
And name.
Left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing, and you know, it's just
Can they do that without me change the order?
The circus it is. So I don't know about that, but what I would do is
I suggest that what we do, Phil, when I'm in your presence, we'll call Pete and we'll speak, as opposed to doing it on the air. I think that'll be the one.
All right then.
All right.
Yeah, because it's a little bit too, things like this are a little bit too personal and too specific, and people want sort of a more of a general appreciation of what can and can't be done, as opposed to and everyone's the same, but everyone's different. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, Phil. Thanks for calling. We'll speak to you later, Phil.
All right then.
Take care. All the best. Bye now. Bye bye. Right, Peter. So we'll take care of that off air, obviously. Okay, so Peter, is there any nuggets? We've got 15 minutes and time really does fly. I know you was breaking down the whole thing about the deregistration of your vehicle and notifying 25 different constabularies and what have you. Obviously, DVLA was one of those that was notified as well, no doubt.
Yeah, and so what people have got to remember is doing things like this is more of a state of mind. What I did is made specific declarations. I didn't just put plates on my car and start driving it around looking for trouble. We were approached by police cars time and time again. Every time I was on the motorway or going through London, the police car either by the side, often, or behind. I thought, this is it. They're going to put the blue light on, and it's going to be pull me over. But they never did. They never did, and could have done. And so, the accusation that the police are too busy to do anything about that doesn't hold true. So it was only a series of what you would call strange coincidences that led me to be pulled over eventually, because I had to go and drop someone off at Stansted Airport. When I came back, there were police around my vehicle. I had to wait for them to go away and found a way of getting in it. Once I got in, the policewoman came up and banged on the window and stated that she wanted me to get out of the vehicle immediately, and I refused. And so off I drove off the car park, waved to the police, and then the two cars followed me behind with their sirens going and their blue lights, and I didn't know what they were doing. As I said to the Crown Court judge, I didn't know what maybe they were in a hurry. Maybe they're in a hurry to get somewhere. So in the end,
we got a live caller. Let's just take this call. One moment. Caller, good afternoon and welcome. What's your name? Where you calling from, please?
Hello, hi, good afternoon. It's Daddy calling from Kilburn. Just again wanted to commend you guys for the good work you're doing. Just to also inform you that with a lot of the things that Peter was saying, there is a lot of research that is out there and is available for people to be able to look into and verify themselves. So I was obviously trying to encourage everybody to do that as well.
Thank you very much, Ade, and we're very, very thankful that you've called in and given your views and your comments. Peter, can you hear Ade?
Yes, thank you very much. That's very kind.
Okay.
Thank you, Ade. Thank you for your listening ears, and you're obviously on the frequency, so keep on doing what you're doing, yeah?
Yeah. Just before you go, try and remind people, if you have a podcast of the program as well that they can listen to afterwards, because I've noticed that with this particular session of your program, there's been intermittent interference with the reception.
Well,
some of it has lasted for about 5 minutes, some of it about 10 minutes, but
yeah.
Let people know where the podcast is so they can listen to it fully if they have any problems listening to it this time around.
And I would say we have to expect the unexpected or the expected, so it is bound to happen. However, you can go to Mixcloud, Omega Radio, and then put in King Lion next to Omega Radio, and it will come straight up.
Yeah. And lastly, there was just the gentleman who first of all called you today. He was mentioning something about the biodiesel, and obviously there's a lot of different cleaner alternative fuels out there, which people need to encourage anybody to try and look into using those fuels. They are out there. Some of them actually cost up to next to nothing. You can modify existing technology to use with those fuels as well. Fantastic.
Good to know. Really good to know. Thank you so much, Ade.
Okay. No
Appreciate it. All right. Peace. Okay. All the best. Bye-bye. Okay, Peter, sorry. Peter?
Yes, I'm still here, listening happily and merrily as we come up to the...
Well, look, we've got 10 minutes to summarise, because that 10 minutes is going to fly, and then the next presenter will be in the building. Any final words that you want to leave with the listeners, Peter?
We've covered a lot of topics, and there's a lot still to cover, but ultimately words don't really mean much. It's very cheap, it's very easy. People can go on the internet and they can read and research things.
I think what we should do... Sorry to cut in, Peter. We should do is give them your YouTube links so that they can see, because Peter's got a lot of stuff on YouTube, folks, that you need to see. And I just want to say one of the things, Peter, that you blew my mind with was when you went onto the HMRC website, that's the tax website, folks, and showed us that basically there is no legislation that requires anybody to pay tax. Is that right, Peter?
Yes, correct, and there isn't, and there never will be, and it's a voluntary tax payment. When PAYE, for example, was introduced, or supposedly the legislation was introduced just after the war, the then Chancellor, who was looking to introduce it, mysteriously was found dead in his apartment in Buckingham Palace Parade, or Buckingham Palace Gardens, on the morning when the reading was supposed to have been made and it was to come into law. The theory is that he was very anti, and he was going to make a speech in Parliament overriding it, because he thought it was an unjust tax to be involved and putting on people right after the austerity of the war. However, so there is no enabling legislation for PAYE. It was simply a strong-arm mafia tactic by the HM Treasury, whereby they sent loads of men into the field wearing trilby hats, brown coats and briefcases, and began to inform all heads of the audit and compliance departments and all the companies that they were going to have to start collecting tax on behalf of the government instead of the government doing it themselves. And that was the beginning of PAYE, a complete fraud, and you don't need to pay it. So, so if they want to go on and have a look at the Peter of England YouTube website, you can either type in Removement Politics, all one word, or you can just type in Peter of England and go to that. And that will, you will find that there. And just to recap for some of these people who might have come in late, websites removement.net, werebank.co.uk, IAOPB.org for private banking, which is the International Association of Private Bankers.org, that's IAOPB. Then there's the Anti-Corruption Court, as I like to call it. If you haven't gone and had a look at it, listeners, please go and have a look at that, because that's got some very potent backup to it. And that's working alongside the Department of Justice and the US DOJ.
Yeah, we're losing a bit, Peter. Your sound quality is dipping a little bit. You're not crystal clear.
Okay, so
that's fantastic.
It's called the International Common Law Court of Record, ICLCOR 750181.org. And then there's freemanlegalservices.com. So those 5 websites should be more than enough to keep people happy and with something to read over the weekend. And please get in touch if you've got any questions following this broadcast through admin1@freemanlegalservices.com. That's admin1, the numeral 1, at freemanlegalservices, all one word, .com. And that, I think, is just about as much as I think we need to say for now. And next time we can cover various other topics, and I look forward to going down onto more specifics where we stay with a topic instead of covering so many. But this was really just to let people know that there's a very, very wide range of subjects that we can cover. And most of them to show that the mortgages and the promissory notes and the exposing of this international banking cartel that's usuriously imposed financial slavery on people for hundreds of years can be broken, and I'm proving it can be broken by the fact I set up a bank with financial instruments that are as equally good as any high street bank has ever manufactured. So if it's good enough for the goose, it's good enough for the gander.
Absolutely.
And there are,
absolutely.
So that's the basis of it.
All right, just for the sake of time, I'm going to read this text and leave this with you. I'm going to get the text sender to email you. I'll just read this quickly, Peter. Please tell me what I can do. The Richmond establishment as my grandfather's estate, and have over 30 years to hand it back. I took them to the European Court, which wasn't successful. Do you think it's a conspiracy, i.e. Masons and Warlocks? And that's coming from D. So D, that's 654. What I'll do is I'll give you Peter's email again. Right, which is admin1@freemanlegalservices.com. Send him an email and he'll be able to address that for you. Is that right, Peter?
Yep, that sounds very good.
Fantastic. All right, Peter, listen, we've got literally 4 minutes. I'm going to let you go. We're going to do this again because it's been brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. I know you're a very, very busy man. You've got a lot of work that you've been doing, sterling work, and I just want to commend you before you go. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Keep on keeping on. And, yeah, it's a pleasure having you in. Absolutely.
And just as a final point there, what I would like to be trying to arrange later in the year, I don't know whether it will happen, but those people who know of Alex Jones, who runs InfoWars out of Texas in America, people will have heard of David Icke. People will or maybe not have heard of a guy called Leo Zagami. Leo the Lion Zagami. If you haven't heard of him, then maybe look him up on some YouTube channel. That's Leo, Leo Zagami. And also Paul Joseph Watson. What I would like to try and do, along with myself, to put a meeting together whereby we could have a small conference. We'll do it somewhere at another event, but that's something that we want to plan for later in the year.
Well, it will happen because we'll make it happen. Peter, I'm going to have to let you go because time is upon us. Thank you again for your time, and we will speak very, very soon. Thank you ever so much. Have a good afternoon, good evening.
A big thank you to all the listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.